Imagine a scientific roadblock so monumental, so utterly baffling, that it literally kept the brightest minds of the 20th century awake at night, and honestly, it continues to stump scientists today. We're diving straight into a really profound intellectual puzzle drawn directly from the physics to God's source material.
We're kicking things off with this incredible, striking thought from the legendary physicist Richard Feynman. He was talking about a specific, incredibly precise number that just exists out there in our universe, dictating how things work, but with absolutely zero underlying explanation. Now, when a physicist of his caliber, and a famous atheist, mind you, says it's as if the hand of God wrote that number, you just know we're dealing with a massive, unexplained anomaly in science.
So, how exactly do we solve physics' greatest mystery? Well, to understand why this is such an agonizing headache for physicists, our source material points out that we first need to take a step back. We really have to look at what science at its absolute highest level is actually trying to achieve.
Part 1. The ultimate theory and the quest for a single law.
We're talking about the holy grail of modern physics here, the theory of everything. Right now, physics is kind of split down the middle. You've got quantum mechanics dealing with all the tiny microscopic stuff, and general relativity handling the massive cosmic stuff. The ultimate dream is to unite all particles, all forces, and all fundamental behaviors under one single elegant umbrella. Essentially, one master equation that explains the entire universe.
The source has this brilliant way of illustrating the quest using a really relatable analogy from ethics. Imagine a society weighed down by dozens of complex behavioral rules, right? You've got strict laws about stealing, super complex regulations for slander, detailed percentages for charity. It's just a lot to keep track of. But what if you could boil all of that down into one unified rule? Do unto others as you want done to yourself. Suddenly, all those scattered rules are unified by one core principle. And that is exactly what physicists are trying to do with the laws of nature.
Section 2. Einstein's rules for judging the theory.
Because you might be wondering, how do physicists actually know when they found this master theory? It isn't just about getting the math to add up. There is a very strict set of criteria. According to the source, Albert Einstein and later the physicist Steven Weinberg established the rules for a perfect theory. It has to be irreducible, meaning you can't break it down any further. It must be minimal, ideally just one single law. It's got to be simple, without a ton of clunky moving parts. It must represent and explain all the observed data. And finally, it has to possess this undeniable elegance, or beauty. Physicists describe this as feeling deeply intuitive, rather than arbitrary or totally contrived.
So let's apply those strict rules back to our ethics analogy for a second. That do unto others rule perfectly satisfies every single one of these rigorous scientific criteria. Think about it. It's irreducible. It's the bedrock. It's just one rule, so it's few. It is incredibly simple to say, it's representative, covering almost all human ethical behavior, and it is absolutely beautiful in its intuitive elegance. When a scientific theory hits all these exact same notes, scientists know they are uncovering the true underlying reality of our universe.
But here is part 3, the mystery of constants, which creates a massive scientific roadblock.
The crucial thing to understand is that this beautiful simplicity completely shatters when we are forced to introduce something called the constants of nature. Take an incredibly unwieldy sequence like 137.0359 and so on. This dictates the fine structure constant, which determines the strength of the electromagnetic force, and it's just one of 25 hyperspecific, seemingly totally random numbers that govern our universe. These constants are things like the exact mass of an electron. They are the exact same everywhere in the universe, measured to unbelievable decimal precision, and they have absolutely zero underlying explanation. They just are.
To really grasp why this ruins everything, let's jump back to our analogy. Imagine forcing these 25 random decimal strings into our perfectly unified ethical theory. It'd be like appending these bizarre, ultra-specific clauses to our simple rule. Do unto others, and oh hey, by the way, make sure you give exactly 13.74% to charity and charge precisely 28.8741632% interest. The intuitive beauty is just totally destroyed. Suddenly, the whole thing feels incredibly arbitrary, highly contrived, and honestly, completely absurd.
Which brings us to Section 4, the grand dilemma.
Scientists are essentially trapped in a corner between two really bad options when trying to incorporate these numbers. Option 1, the constants are fundamental, meaning they are just uncaused facts of nature. But if that's true, your theory of everything is suddenly just a couple of beautiful qualitative laws,
plus a hideous, complex, messy list of 25 random numbers. It totally fails Einstein's criteria for simplicity and beauty. Okay, option 2. The constants are reducible, meaning they can actually be derived from a deeper master law. The problem? The math literally doesn't work. It is practically impossible to mathematically derive 25 precise chaotic decimals from one elegant qualitative law.
And this part is actually wild. It brilliantly illustrates their frustration. Over the decades, desperate physicists literally started mashing up known mathematical constants, like pi or the base of natural logarithms, just hoping to derive these physical numbers. They would frantically calculate things like pi to the 4th power divided by 2, just crossing their fingers that it would miraculously equal the fine structure constant. But every single attempt failed, because as soon as a new decimal place was measured in a lab, those math tricks totally fell apart. There is simply no known mathematical relationship here, period.
Part 5. The God of the Gaps, a logical fallacy.
Because this dilemma is so severe and seemingly impossible to solve, it's super tempting to just throw your hands up and jump to a supernatural conclusion. But our source material strictly warns against doing this. Even though this explainer is based on material literally titled Physics to God, it maintains a really strict objective distance here. It emphasizes that plugging a scientific mystery with a divine band-aid is just terrible methodology. It's a logical fallacy known as the God of the Gaps. When you hit a wall in your understanding and you just shrug and say, well, God must have done it, you aren't actually explaining anything at all.
The source uses a really perfect example to highlight this: the blue sky. Imagine if, hundreds of years ago, when early scientists couldn't figure out why the sky was blue, they just gave up and said, because God made it blue. If they had done that, the science of atmospheric optics and light scattering would literally never have progressed. It is, at its core, a lazy argument from ignorance.
So, strictly speaking, saying God wrote these 25 constants right now is a complete fallacy. It completely short-circuits the scientific process. True science requires immense patience, When we hit these massive gaps in our knowledge, the right move isn't to artificially plug them with a supernatural entity. It's to wait for new scientific knowledge to emerge, to keep digging, keep testing, and let the data lead the way.
Therefore, we are left with a genuine, agonizing mystery. These 25 constants, these incredibly specific, chaotic strings of decimals, seem to be the absolute antithesis of a beautiful, simple theory of everything. They stand in direct, stubborn defiance of Einstein's criteria. They're just inexplicable facts of reality patiently waiting for a legitimate explanation.
But don't worry, the source material doesn't just leave us stranded in the dark. They tease an upcoming ultimate resolution to this incredible dilemma, a concept known as fine-tuning. They argue that this specific concept is the key to finally reconciling all this chaotic data and doing it without resorting to lazy arguments from ignorance.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to ponder. If we are completely blocked, if these numbers utterly ruin the elegance of physics, but we also can't use the God of the Gaps fallacy to just magic the problem away, how exactly will this concept of fine-tuning unlock the greatest damn mystery in physics? What secrets are actually hiding in those decimals? Well, that is exactly what we are going to explore next time. Keep questioning, keep learning, and thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.